The world has plenty to say about young people, what they watch, what they fear, what they should become, but how often does anyone stop and actually listen? Because beneath all that noise, there are questions, ideas still taking shape, and signals worth paying attention to. The Signal Room is not a stage for perfect answers. It is a space to speak honestly, to disagree thoughtfully, and to ask what adults may have forgotten to ask. This is your pathway into the Signal Room, where the conversation begins with the people shaping what comes next.
Welcome, everyone. Throughout the Horizon Dialogue series, we've explored an extraordinary range of ideas, from economics and education to neuroscience, artificial intelligence, and the future of society. Yet today we arrive somewhere both older and more fundamental. Before there were books, before there were universities, before there were newspapers, governments, or scientific journals, there was art. Long before human beings organized themselves through written language, we painted. We left marks on cave walls. We drew animals, symbols, hands, and stories. Art became one of humanity's earliest ways of communicating what mattered, what frightened us, what inspired us, and what gave us hope. In many ways, painting is not simply another cultural activity. It is one of the foundations on which culture itself was built. Today, we live in a world overflowing with images, yet one where genuine attention often feels increasingly scarce. This conversation asks whether art still has something essential to teach us, not simply about beauty, but about belonging, imagination, healing, and what it means to remain fully human. Our guest today is Lida Sherafatmand. Lida is an internationally recognized artist and founder of Florescencism. I hope I pronounced that one right. A philosophy that explores flourishing through beauty, flowers, memory, and human experience. Her work has become part of a wider conversation spanning education, neuroscience, peace, well-being, culture, and making the world making her a wonderful guest as Horizon begins building its bridge towards the next initiative, the Signal Room, where we explore the world through the voices and experiences of younger generations. Lida, welcome today.
Hello, Michael.
Hello, yes, welcome. Before we begin, I think it should probably acknowledge the word that everyone has been quietly practicing before us today, recording, and despite that, I still got it wrong. Florescencism. It's a beautiful word, although perhaps not the easiest to pronounce when you look at it on a first attempt. Can you help us? How would you pronounce it, and how does the word itself break down? And what does it actually mean?
Yeah, well, the word comes from fluorescence. We have the expression fluorescence of a civilization, fluorescence of a place, which in English would refer to the flowering of a plant when it's suddenly growing into different branches, yeah. I can't find the word now. Sorry, will escape this part.
Shapes and directions, as plants often do.
Into different directions, yes. And the idea was that I was exploring during challenges of life, how can we grow out of challenges? And I saw that in nature, this capacity just exists. Everywhere we look in nature, this capacity exists. And my being drawn very much to flowers in general and painting them, the whole thing came together, and that's how I thought of fluorescence as a word. And the ism just added to it because that's the suffix that we use when it becomes a bit of a framework, whether it's an artistic framework, cultural framework, any other framework. Yeah, that's how it came. But talking to Rohit the other day, I noticed he made a better breakdown. So it's floor, essence, and then ism. And I thought that's a better breakdown, actually, because we go into the essence of our flowering. Yeah.
It's like the building blocks of the concept, isn't it?
Right.
So you've just put a great definition as to where the name came from, and you've actually just talked a little about how we should understand your paintings. But at what point did you realize that this had become more than just a style? One could also argue it's a philosophy.
Right. It was through my studies in international relations. I was looking at the different theories that exist that break down how we understand international relations. So there are different lenses. There is the lens of realism, which looks at the darker side of human nature and how to keep that in control. And then there is the brighter lens of idealism, which looks at the brighter side. There is rationalism, structuralism, Marxism. There are all these different lenses to look at how our international relations is built, how our policies are created, how we make decisions in our international relations. And I thought there is somewhere culture missing as a lens. Is it because we dismiss culture, or is it because the way we are prioritizing culture or looking at culture is the answer to this missing lens? And then in 2009, one IR scholar published a book called A Cultural Theory of International Relations, Professor Richard Netlibo. And he looked at four basic forces in human nature: fear, rationality, self-esteem, and honor, appetite. He looked at those. And I was searching on those for a long time also myself. I found some Chinese philosophers, I found Russian philosophers, I found also scholars from Europe, Johan Galtung, who has the Norwegian professor who has done a lot of work on peace studies. And I managed to find more elements in human nature, which also create a change in international relations. And that's how I saw there is a link between the idea of fluorescence and also human nature, international relations, and therefore a cultural lens for looking at our
It's a it,
bigger
it is a
society.
very powerful metaphor, isn't it? I mean, the whole notion of flowering, or we often talk about people blossoming. It's a very positive concept. And I'm thinking, so why did flowers become your language? Because you'd have a fascinating representation of different flowers representing different concepts. How did it become your language rather than just your subject?
I see. Um, it I think it started with my personal journey as a painter and as a person in society. We had left Iran after during towards the end of the war, the Iran-Iraq war, and the change of society, the change of culture. I was at the beginning of my teenage years, which are very challenging years for every person, and then if you add other external challenges, they can become even harder. And there was a point where I couldn't talk much, where I just couldn't
Mm,
speak much. And
mm,
that was very hard for making friends when you can't talk much. So I used to sit in a valley of flowers every day after school, and I would imagine that the flowers are my friends because they don't expect you to talk, and yet they don't leave just because you're not talking. So you communicate and connect on a non-verbal level. That's how I think the connection
yeah,
started. Yeah. And then
understand.
yeah, sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
No, I just said I understand, fully agree.
Yeah, and then I got to know when I was 16 years old, I also discovered the fluorescence remedies, which is what by Bach, the Bach
Yeah.
fluorescence remedies. And I thought how interesting that these can have an effect on somebody's state of mind. So the smells can have a smell, the oil can have the scents can have an effect, the oils can have an effect, essential oils. And that's where I started to see there is really a link between us humans and the natural world. And I started to explore that. And having the wish to travel to different countries with my art, I noticed that no culture has any problems with flowers. There is no polemic
Mm,
around it, there is no
mm-mm.
fighting about it. So that made life much easier also to communicate with flowers because there was no resistance in front of me. Yeah,
A
that's
type
how.
of universal language.
Right, right. And the variety is just, I think the word fascinating is an understatement, but the variety of flora is amazing. Yeah,
No, it is.
that's
It's
how
a it, and I don't think anyone objects or doesn't like a good bouquet of flowers, doesn't like the scent of flowers. They're both the scent and the visual. They're very powerful elements, and I think I think it's universal across all cultures, isn't it? Flowers are part of all cultures.
I think so. I was talking to a friend of mine who is also a big scholar and activist. She's a human rights lawyer from Nigeria. She was telling me that in their village, flowers are not a big thing. It would be more actual plants or trees
Mm,
that
mm,
they relate to. So they wouldn't even like to cut flowers because they would look at that as being cruel to the to the plants. So, but so if they want to give a gift, it would be the whole tree planting or, uh, but but again, we come back to the flora, the plants. Yeah, it's still leaves. It's still the plant world, right?
It's very much, I suppose, the flowers are what provide the inspiration to a lot of artists over the centuries because they're so beautiful, they're so unique. And I think that's possibly been the stimulation. So, on that point, do you think art arrives before science? Uh, is it
Hmm.
the stimulus, is it the inspiration to science?
I'm not sure if it's the inspiration to science, but I think many of the questions that science explores are definitely explored first by artists, and then they are explored by scientists later. And I do know that as humans, we do have what is called the preverbal mind, which
Mm,
speaks and communicates to ourselves at least via images and symbols.
mm,
So as you said in your introduction, it's a very old language. Symbols and paintings are very old language in human
mm.
civilization. Yeah.
And you said earlier, in fact, that science now investigates beauty, the positive benefits of floral beauty, for example, and the benefits of that floral beauty on the human soul and benefits. And artists have explored these questions for centuries. So maybe science is catching up.
Well, yeah, I think so. I mean, even the fact that, let's say, in modernism and postmodernism, in the art world, we started to criticize beauty in the sense that if you want to create engaged art, you have to focus more on the concept and rather than the aesthetic beauty. And so aesthetics went a bit low in priority. But with neuroaesthetics, they are seeing that actually humans also do need beauty because it connects us back to nature. So yeah, and this was also one of the points that I've had in my art, insisting on creating engaged art, which is also beautiful, and that if we want to be socially engaged, it doesn't necessarily mean that the art has to look visually violent or disturbing. That is one approach which is valid, but this is also another approach, especially if we are talking or approaching people who have been through traumas or just normal stress in life, they may want to need to be grounded via the
Mm.
art thing. So uh,
Well,
yeah,
you
I
talked
suppose.
about that yourself, didn't you? When you would sit in the valley of the flowers, when you were struggling with language and you'd lost your sort of ability to communicate orally, you sat yourself down in the valley of flowers, and that was your lived experience in terms of this floral kingdom. So that was, in fact, very similar experience to many people, I think.
Yes, I believe so. I believe so. And I mean, I also remember going to art galleries or going to art fairs, and I could not find a spot uh, of refuge, a spot of safety. And I understand that the art was trying to destabilize the viewer in order to get the message across. but I also realized that besides that, we also need another little space where the art also provides something else or explores something else, explores what it means to be grounded, what it means to be connected to oneself. So these all, brought me to the idea of exploring fluorescencism, exploring the conditions which enable a person's flowering or a society's flowering as an artistic inquiry, and that artistic inquiry brought me to many branches. Yeah, international relations, education, environment, also all these fields.
We'll get onto those in a minute because it is a very interesting connection to move from the fragility and beauty of flowers to the, shall we say, rough and tumble world of international relations. But there is a link, and you'll share that link with us shortly. One of the observations earlier, we had a chat earlier that stuck with me was, and you just mentioned it, is that the world is a loud place, and art itself is trying to sort of be loud and spectacular. Yet your art is soft, it's gentle, it may be viewed as fragile. It's a contradiction to the trend in a way everywhere else, isn't it? So your paintings seem to be moving in exactly the opposite direction to where the rest of the world is going with this loud, violent, spectacular approach. Do you want to talk a little bit about that? What do you mean, and how do you view the world as being loud?
Yeah, well, it is again both linked to my personal experience in the world and also the what I saw, what I observed in the art world. As a tiny person who is a little bit fragile, let's say by nature, but also very strong, I noticed how easy it is to get overstepped if you tend to be a soft, gentle person. And I saw, but
Mm,
that doesn't really say anything good about us being civilized.
no.
So
Yeah.
and also the constant critique that I got in my artwork, but make them more violent, but they have to be disturbing. And I'm like, but that is not the voice which is coming out of me.
No.
And even the image that came to me as a 3-year-old child, I share with you the first image that I had, which made me to draw. I was 3 years old when my hometown was bombarded in Iran. And as a 3-year-old, I thought the war is probably my fault. I have probably done something bad and we've been punished for it. So one day I was crying and I was looking at the skies. I thought God would probably pop out from the sky. And I said, please tell me, what did I do wrong? I promise you, I'm not going to do it again. And I was waiting for an answer. And while waiting, suddenly this image appeared. The sun was playing the flute, and the sounds formed angels. The angels were dancing on the clouds and throwing these roses and flowers. So I thought that was the answer to my question. I took my crayons and I drew it. I had showed it to my mom at that time, and I said, I think people misunderstood God. He doesn't want them to bomb our houses. He wants them to listen to the sun singing and dance and take the flowers. So
That was
that in a
the
way,
wisdom of a child. Yeah.
so that in a way remained also a question in my mind. How come people take the choice of bombing rather than another available choice, which is so much nicer, so much warmer and more beautiful? And that also in a way made me a little bit hard-headed to resist the criticisms and the
Mm,
expectations, especially for artists who come from war-torn areas. There is an expectation to see in their art violence, misery, and I know there is violence and misery. It's just that I accessed another side of reality while I was in the middle of bombardments, and I want to make that voice heard in my art. I cannot give the art establishment what they want to see, because then they're not hearing the artist. They're hearing something a paradigm they've already formed, and they're just continuing with that. So I insisted, and funnily enough, it's mostly after the pandemic that appreciation and understanding of what I'm doing
mm,
increased, because during the pandemic, even many art museums had to start to take out artworks which make people sit and ponder. They couldn't just go on with the shocking and the sensational and the spectacle trends. And so they started to get the point. Yeah.
So do you think generally humanity is losing the ability or has lost the ability to notice quieter things and they're only attracted to the loud and violent?
Um, I mean, I wouldn't be able to answer that accurately, probably, but what I'm noticing is that the Gen Z generation are becoming aware of this, and they're sometimes even spending whole days without being connected to Wi-Fi or trying to slow down. And funnily enough, many people from the Gen Z generation tend to be attracted to my art precisely because they feel it just makes them be present and connect. So
That's it.
that's helpful for the new
That's
generations.
no, but it's an incredibly important thing you said actually. And earlier in the Horizon Dialogue series, we were talking a lot about the digital world and Gen Z, and we asked one of our experts what he thought or what she thought. There was two of them was the most important thing for young people, and they said exactly what you just said was to be present in the real world, not just in the digital world. And maybe that's why your work appeals so strongly to Gen Z audiences because it helps them to calm down and reconnect with the world.
Right. Oh, I see. That's nice to hear. So the Gen Z themselves t told you this during the dialogue.
No, one of our earlier speakers, he said that Gen Z needed to do this to so
Okay,
as opposed to being, and you're saying that Gen Z in fact does respond strongly to your
they
work,
do.
which
Yeah.
suggests there's real hope for Gen Z.
Right, right. I think so. In fact, I have one event coming up soon, which is specifically for Gen Z around the world to share with them the story. It's called Emerging Leaders Gathering.
Uh-huh.
Yes, and yeah, regarding being present, this is another thing with the type of art which goes for a spectacle and
Mm.
effect and shock effect and sensationalism, which is all fine. I'm not criticizing that, and I'm not saying it's in any way less important or less valid, but I'm just saying that the oversaturation can, throw us off balance. And so with this type of work, you need to actually be present and look at it. It's not going to just grab your attention in the first second,
And
because of the
and
loudness.
And
So
perhaps that's
that's
one of the
the
reasons why Gen Z is so attracted to it, because they're so focused on the short attention span, the loud that captures their attention. And maybe
yeah,
this is, in fact, an opportunity to do things in a different way. So why do
exactly.
you think the older generations, what do you think the older generations have overlooked in terms of the quiet space being present, etc., and your work? What do they recognize, the Gen Z people, that the older generation might not be recognizing?
Well, I mean, there are older generation who do appreciate this work, but perhaps not the ones who are functioning from the previous paradigm of things have to be shocking, things have to bring a spectacle effect, and the ones which are operating from that paradigm, it doesn't really capture their attention, so it's overlooked by them as you mentioned, and I suppose the context in which they were living maybe because Gen Z came in a world which is already filled with crisis everywhere, so
Yeah.
perhaps they were yearning for something grounding. Perhaps this is also the historical context maybe brought this about. Yeah.
Yeah, that's that contrast, that societal contrast may have been a driving force in Gen Z looking at this work in a different way to the former generations. Because you spoke earlier about the paintings creating a safety and a sense of belonging, not only emotionally, but physiologically. And we talked before about being present but connecting with the painting. And flowers typically do remind us of gentle people. So why do flowers remind you of gentle people?
Um, well, because they don't shout, maybe. They're not loud, they're not dominating. They're gentle presences. And yeah, I think I used to feel safe with the flowers because they are also non-threatening in their physical appearance, maybe. They're not that dominating. This is
it's just
another thing. Yeah,
no, no, sorry, I was just going to ask about the gentleness because it's an interesting concept, isn't it? That it's almost as if you're gentle, you're pushed to one side, or it's undervalued, isn't it, to some extent? But it shouldn't be undervalued. In fact, it should and can be seen as a form of strength. Someone who's
yeah.
gentle doesn't mean they're weak.
Exactly. This is it. This is it. We have very often associated power with dominance or strength with dominance, and real power doesn't need to dominate, actually. Um, it can hold a space, it can connect, it can understand, it can have resilience. And
I'd go as
plants and
far as to
flowers
say
are
it can
very
also be
resilient.
welcoming and opening. Gentleness
Yeah.
tends to encourage people to connect more, to have a sense of belonging. Whereas the strengths you're talking about, the people put up barriers, or that doesn't exactly encourage people to belong, does it?
Yes, exactly. Exactly, very much so. And this sense of belonging, I think, is a very big challenge, especially at the moment in the world due to the digital world. Many people maybe are connected online, but they don't necessarily feel connected. So I think even our sense of belonging is being challenged. And then there is also the issue of identity there, due to the fact that many cultures are having influences on each other. Sometimes people are confused. Even young generation might be confused. Okay, so am I Italian? Am I Maltese? Am I British? So I think one way to flower out of this crisis is also grow deeper roots in our humanity. And to grow deeper roots, again, we need to be grounded and connected so we don't get so destabilized by surface changes. Yeah,
Yeah,
this is
absolutely.
my
And
proposal.
no, but and I think you said it before, is that your art offers the opportunity to sit, ponder, and reconnect. And I think that's what people are perhaps not doing enough of. They like the loud bang and then move to the next one. But you're actually asking people to sit, ponder, and reconnect and become grounded, as you said.
Yes, I mean, if
So
you say that to an average person, they will just say, "Oh, I don't have time for that." And it is true because they have many tasks to do. It's just that while running, they're also burning themselves out. They're also getting disconnected. They're also losing time. So,
correct. Yeah.
yeah.
It's I'm just curious, we're human beings. We are in fact animals. Do you have any experience or examples of how you see animals responding to art? You told me a funny story about two owls that came and they sort of looked at your painting for a long time and their heads moved around and they seemed to be connecting, but they weren't the only animals. So what's your view of the response of animals to art?
Yeah, so in fact, I'm branching out a bit from the flora to also fauna, connecting to the animals. Animals, especially wild animals, have very sharp instincts. They can detect things from 100 meters away. If somebody is passing by, what is
Hmm.
safe, what is dangerous. And yeah, I've been having experience with these wild birds. So owls that were at my place because their wing was injured, but somehow as soon as they entered the house, as if they knew the place, they just went straight into the spot where I sit and paint. And even though I provided a little box for them to be inside and safe, they wanted to just stay by the paintings. That is where they felt comfortable. And they would just observe every painting and just sit and sometimes just close their eyes next to the painting. And I found that fascinating. I thought they're probably by instinct they are sensing something. And this has happened also with a crow which had come to my place. and the sparrow which had come to my place, and street cats sometimes walk in, and again they go straight into the spot where I sit to paint. They don't, there are many other spots in the place they can sit, but they all are drawn to that spot. So I thought there's probably something that they can sense, and I took that as a good sign.
No, but I think it's the, your paintings have a general gentleness to them, and that gentleness must be perceived by the animals and birds as well. And there is that science of safety and the regulation of the nervous system. We don't know necessarily how it works with animals, but they must have that response that there's an appeasing presence with your art, and they find, in fact, safety perhaps in your art, and they go there and think, this is fine. I can sit here for a long time and feel safe. And maybe that the beauty of your artwork is, even for animals, a pathway to trust, to connection, to
Yeah.
being in a safe space.
Right. And I mean, you mentioned the nervous system. Again, going back to my own personal experience, having passed all my childhood in wartime and then later leaving the country, having to settle in a new culture, uh, I had to study a lot about the nervous system because I was having panic attacks,
Mm,
and it's not an easy journey settling
no.
down in a new place. So this also made me realize how many people are struggling with nervous system issues and with feeling safe in the world. So again, I
So
mean, animals connect basically through their nervous system. I don't think the rational
mm,
mind is at work there. Yeah. Not
not as far as we know. Who knows? Maybe
as
one
far
day
as
we'll
we know.
understand that animals, not as far as we know, but it's interesting, isn't it? Because your paintings became somewhere for you where you could experience safety after your journey, after your personal journey. And I think maybe that sense of safety has sometimes somehow been transferred into the artwork and then gets transferred out again to the artwork to those who view it. Do you think that makes sense?
Yes, I think so. I mean, it's very similar to when we listen to a song, a singer, they pass on their emotions through their voice, through their
Yeah.
words and tonality. And I think it's the same with the paintings. What we are experiencing and bring out in the image with every brush stroke, somehow it just gets transmitted. It comes out of the picture. I don't know how that happens, but it happens.
No,
Yes.
it's one day we will understand it, I'm sure. And this is where the science plays the role with art and vice versa. But one day we will understand it more fully, I'm sure. But
Yes,
why do you
I mean,
think?
yeah, there have been some psychologists and psychotherapists who have bought my art specifically for the room where they receive their clients because they said it helps the atmosphere for the client to feel grounded, safe, and open to new possibilities. So I thought that's
I was
also
just
interesting.
about to ask you that, whether your paintings could, in fact, create safety for someone else. But clearly they do, because if psychiatrists and psychologists are buying your art for exactly that purpose, they're in fact creating a safe space for their patients through your art. That's amazing.
Yes, that was very nice for me to hear because obviously the psychotherapists or the psychologists are it's their first obligation to create safety for their clients, and that was a good confirmation. Yeah.
So do you think the beauty of your art, uh, does it have a role to play in a sense of belonging? You talked about your earlier experiences, but for someone else, does your art give people a sense of belonging?
Mhm. Well, I suppose feeling belonging is also a personal free choice.
Mm,
I cannot insert something in the viewers, and that wouldn't be right. But I can definitely explore the conditions which enable that sense of belonging. And this sense of grounding and safety is a basic requirement for finding where a person belongs. So, do I belong here? Do I belong there? Do I belong with this group of people, with that group of people? And for that, you need to be at peace first with yourself for the answers to
mm.
come. In fact, one reason why there has been so much resistance towards beauty and harmony in art is because authoritarian regimes were using art or misusing art for their propaganda. So now there is a little bit of cautiousness with harmonious looking art because they say, oh, are you using it for some ideological propaganda, you know? And this is actually the opposite. This is to, uh, in a way, provide an atmosphere where the viewer can think as independently as they can from their own authentic self. So it's not inserting a point of view, but it's saying, find your point of view from the most grounded place possible, you know.
It's a bit like the art that you create, or art generally, is building a sort of emotional infrastructure of communities. And I'm fascinated by the fact that Gen Z is now turning to your type of art as a way of, are they escaping the noise? Or are they escaping the clutter? Are they escaping the demands of modern life? But either way, it's a refuge, and it's beginning to build an emotional infrastructure for these communities and these cultures.
Yes, yes, and I'm very, very happy about that also because another motivation or force inside me. Obviously, my whole art, my whole painting journey started as a 3-year-old in war. So I wanted to
Hmm.
somehow, when I leave this world, I would like to leave this world a little tiny bit better than the one that I came to. So if I'm seeing that the new generation are getting something out of my work, that also brings satisfaction to my heart that I am doing what I'm supposed to be doing as a painter in society. So the fact that Gen Z are relating is really fantastic. In fact, on the call that I will have for emerging leaders, there are some Gen Z taking part from Afghanistan, from Pakistan, from some Latin American countries, and some of them are actually in quite critical situations where they are doing it in hiding because of the social pressure. But the fact that they're accessing the meeting and the whole thing with the art is just very nice because it's like that little space which got opened to me as a 3-year-old in the middle of the harsh atmosphere. The sun came and sang, and then that led me into bigger things, you know.
That
Yes.
your personal
I get
experience might
excited
be
about
why.
it, so I talk a lot, but
No,
I
but
should keep the answers
listen,
short.
but passion is what makes us human, and your passion is beautiful to hear about your earlier lived experiences. And I think it's that passion that carries through your art in a non-violent way, in a gentle, artistic, beautiful way, so younger people connect naturally with your work. And it's a journey of beauty that they're clutching onto. Now, the reasons why they're doing that, we had a quick discussion. Maybe they're looking to disconnect, to reground, but it's an important difference, isn't it, from the bang bang of what modern art used to be, was to shock. Now it's not about shocking. Now it's about almost soothing. Have art to play a soothing role. And we'll be looking at, you talked about the younger people that you'll be speaking with shortly, but it exists, doesn't it? The art. We're creating a new opportunity called the signal room. And we will, in fact, invite young people into that signal room to get their opinions. And it exists so we can listen to them to better understand the world that they will be inheriting. And listening to you, I couldn't help but wonder that, your paintings are doing something similar. So they're listening before speaking loudly. And it's a trait, in fact, that's vanishing, isn't it, from the modern world? We tend to be terrible listeners, very loud speakers, but maybe we did a little bit more listening, a little less talking. The world might be a slightly better place. And I think you're seeking to contribute to that.
Yeah, well, I hope so. But yeah, listening, I think, is important. And listening not only to the verbal communication, but also the non-verbal. In fact, I was even talking to some, again, psychologists who are researching about the effect of the digital world on youngsters. And one thing they were saying is that the youngsters who are spending much time on digital communication, sending emojis and all that, are not reading real facial expressions as
Mm, mm.
sharply as children who socialize in person. So this is another thing, being able to connect with our full senses, with our full humanity. Verbal is important. The digital world is very important. Just balance, yeah. Keeping the
But
balance is that's important, yeah.
in a way, your art can help young people sort of reconnect with their own imaginations, reconnect with a world of beauty. And you wonder whether children are losing confidence in their own imagination because the algorithms are dictating a lot of how they should react. And that's not what we want. We want free flowing ideas. We want young people to think freely, to use their imagination rather than just consume images that are already available online. And so the question, I suppose, in my mind is, can painting help young people rediscover their own inner imaginations? What do you think?
Yes, I think it can definitely help that. Painting, music, crafts with the clay, and I think even some gardening, creative gardening,
Yeah.
works with soil. I think this can all help uh, to keep a healthy level development overall balance for the young generation. Yeah.
Look, gardening, in my opinion, is a form of art as well. I mean, the expression of gardens across the centuries has always been an expression of the culture. And I think the other thing we talk about grounded, you can't get much more grounded than having your hands in dirt, planting
Yes.
something. So you're both grounded and you're participating in cultural art that will last because when you plant something, we talked about Florescencism, it will blossom, it will grow. And so it's actually a bit of a thumbprint, isn't it, into the world that you will leave because of what you've been doing in the natural environment. And maybe younger people are looking at your work as a way of sort of reconnecting naturally with their lives. So, what questions are they asking? They're overcome with AI algorithmic recommendations that change their creativity. They consume images rather than create them. So, in your opinion, can painting help young people rediscover that imagination, rediscover that ability to draw, design, and create?
Yes, I think it can definitely help that to give a space to their imagination. And also, I don't know if I referred to our pre-verbal mind. I think I did at the beginning of our conversation.
Yes.
This also gives them access to their pre-verbal mind because, our intuition senses things and gets messages and gets information, but we tend to put it down and we bring the rational mind in.
Mm,
So also to keep that pre-verbal mind active, because it does bring us information, not always accurate maybe, but it's important to have it, to have access to it. I am painting in the past 6 months. I'm painting very often the white phoenix. Maybe you can see it in this painting. This is a
yes.
white
Yes.
phoenix. This white phoenix came during one of my meditations. Meditation is one of the methods that I use to access images, just like that sun with the flute came to me. I had no idea what the white phoenix meant. This was my preverbal mind, my nervous system that generated that, because the nervous system, is a very old, ancient system which has survived
Mm,
throughout human evolution. So it has lots of
mm,
stored information in it. And so I searched what's the meaning of white phoenix. White phoenix is a phoenix which, unlike the fire phoenix, is reborn through integration. So the fire phoenix,
uh-huh.
gets destroyed and then rises
Yes.
from the ashes. But the white
From the
phoenix,
ashes. Yeah.
yeah, exactly, from the ashes. But the white phoenix, when faced with crisis, it absorbs the lessons, it integrates the lessons, and then it's reborn. So there is no need for a total distraction. It's in a new state of evolution. And so now lots of white phoenixes are coming out because this is also part of growth. And it shows that growth doesn't always require a total distraction. It can be much more gentle. It can integrate wisdom and then get reborn. So, but again, this to bring me back to access to the pre-verbal mind and children with their imagination. Imagination is part of the pre-verbal mind. And I think there is whole reservoir of wisdom there, which comes from ancient knowledge. And we don't need to lose access to all that. And it's nice to have access to it, I mean, for dealing with today's problems also.
Absolutely. And I think the symbolism of the white phoenix is incredibly powerful because, as you said, the other phoenix went too close to the sun and the flames, was burnt and destroyed. The white phoenix, it's almost like absorbs the problem and then reborns a wiser being. So it makes me think of your owls, because owls are wise as well. So maybe there's a connection between the owls and your white phoenix, who knows? But it's a wonderful way of speaking about how to look at the world, the white phoenix as a symbol. It's not destruction, it's rebirth, it's regeneration and enrichment, in fact, isn't it? Because it's being enriched by the knowledge it then puts inside.
Exactly. It regenerates itself via absorbing knowledge, absorbing wisdom, and becoming a new person, a new civilization, a new level of culture with the new knowledge. Yeah.
So I'm curious, we're adults and the signal room is about children. In your mind, what can we do as adults to protect and nurture the imagination of young people into the next generation? That's a tough question, I know, but
Yes.
it,
Yes, I think the integrating art lessons, so not only painting, but as we said, even music, even crafts, and really gardening. I keep thinking about gardening as such an important element. I wish I had in my primary school gardening skills taught
yeah.
to me, you know. I think those will keep, and it will also nurture their connection with the rest of the world in terms of that non-verbal connection. I think that
Well,
just, I mean, it might be simplified to say it, but it does make us a smarter humans.
for sure. I mean, the notion of, I think the notion of being grounded, the notion about creating, the notion about appreciation, gentleness, these are things that may be a little overlooked at this point in time. So do you think that you're looking to build a new type of culture? Obviously, gentleness could be a pillar of that culture, but what kind of culture are you hoping to help build with your artwork?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't like to sound too grandiose by saying I'm building a whole new culture, but I am hoping that this pillar of gentleness and the exploration of conditions that enable human flourishing becomes a respected pillar in our
Mm,
culture, and it can grow in all these fields that we mentioned, whether it's our international relations lenses, theoretical lenses, whether it's our educational lens, whether it's our civil society taking actions to help grassroots. That is definitely, and also it revises our understanding of power, that power doesn't mean domination. Power also means holding a space. We can look at
mm,
power in constructive ways. We can be powerful as gentle beings. Yeah.
mm. Exactly. I mean, the power doesn't come from the force, the physical force or the threat of violence. It comes from,
Yeah.
I think, a respect, a recognition, an appreciation, and an understanding that even if you're a gentle, they talk about gentle giants. Even if you're gentle, you can
Yes.
still move the world. And it's great because you've explained why you believe gentleness, beauty, and belonging are essential for the future. Um, and art influences the values. I'm just wondering what you think institutions, educators, and communities can do. Perhaps they're already doing some of it already, but what they can do more of to help support this vision. And I think it's a wonderful vision to try and insert and secure that gentleness pillar is part of the emerging culture.
Yes, I mean, I know that, for example, in Denmark, they have introduced empathy lessons at schools.
Mm. Yep.
Classes on empathy. Yes. So gentleness could also be introduced together with that with that sense of empathy. In Malta, the schools have what is called systems of knowledge, which gives them a bit of an overall general knowledge, cooking, environment. This could be very well inserted in that general knowledge lesson. Social skills, they give them in systems of knowledge as well. So I think it can be integrated. And another point that came to my mind, there is a very serious study going on with neurologists and psychologists who are studying children who have autism, and they are seeing how their telepathic communication is extremely strong. So they might not be verbally fluent like non-autistic children, but they can literally read your mind. If you're thinking about a number, if you're thinking about any thought, the autistic child knows exactly what you are thinking. Therefore, that is again part of the nonverbal communication. And I think
It's perhaps some of the skills we have lost as humans by all of the noise through which we have lived. And if gentleness
it's
can
very
bring back a
possible.
more quiet time, we
I
might get
think it's
there.
very possible. Yeah, it's very possible that that's one of the reasons we lost touch with that capacity. Yeah.
We've lost touch with a lot of our capacities, and that's a very interesting example you use about autistic children and the ability to telepathically understand and empathize with their people with whom they're speaking in inverted commas. They're not really speaking, but they're communicating. So it's fascinating. And I think empathy it's interesting you talk about it, the Danish example of teaching empathy, because I've heard and I've read that empathy is one of the things that is lacking most in most workplaces. People don't have
Oh,
empathy. They're very individualistic, and to be empathy, it's as simple as saying you have to put yourself in someone else's shoes, and
yeah.
people can't do that because they're so self-obsessed. So maybe the gentleness pillar will help us also become more empathetic, and as an empathetic society, we'd probably get on a lot better with everyone else, and we'd
Yeah.
develop ourselves as well.
Yeah, I mean, you would be surprised at the number of people who along my journey have been telling me, but are you stupid? Are you only thinking about other people? You should be thinking about yourself. You should be more selfish. See what sells, paint what sells. And so in a way, empathy as a value. So they are looking at the value of empathy as not something valuable. Saying the more selfish you are, the more smart you become, the more successful you become. So these are all values that we are you know, teaching. So I remember this because you mentioned that workplaces, due to the fact that it's a very competitive environment,
Mm.
probably. So they're saying, just think about yourself, forget about other people. I mean, I
It's
wonder
it's
if this is
terrible.
one reason. Yeah.
It's all, as you referred to values, and this goes back to you were talking about the softness and the gentleness of your art. But in a way, the value system of humanity has become skewed. Because if we were more empathetic, as you said, I'm pretty sure our value system would be more in line with the common good. It's a challenge, and I think maybe your art will help us get there. I know you're very modest, and you don't want to say I couldn't make that sort of contribution, but I think you're underestimating the extent of the contribution of the gentleness and the expressionism in your art that in fact could do. And you talked about the nervous system. We all know how the human hormonal system operates. And I'm pretty sure that someone who sits in front of your paintings calms down. The hormonal system calms down, and they start thinking in a very different way. There's not the fight or flight, it's calm. And the mind always works better in a calm atmosphere. Do you think your paintings can help humanity to calm down?
No, I hope so. I mean, it does remind me of another person who purchased one of my pieces, which is with the dandelion flower.
Uh-huh.
And the dandelion flower in flower essence remedies calms tension, so it brings emotional calm. And she literally tells me, I mean, this is now many years that she's got this, that every time when she comes back from work, the first thing she does is to sit, put her feet up, and look at this painting to calm down. So
Yeah.
So far, indications are that way. How far it will go, I don't know. I hope
But
it will
that's a
continue.
wonderful example, isn't it, of of some of the small actions individuals can take in their everyday lives to change things, to change their well-being, perhaps to change their entourage. The small things. I mean, people overlook the small things, and I think your art is a good example of. It's not that it's a small thing, but gentleness perhaps is associated with small. Violence is perhaps associated with big, and you have to pay a little bit more attention to see it because. But if you do see it, it has an impact on you that is perhaps more far-reaching than the loud and the violent, so to speak. So I just think it's a huge contribution that you will make if people take the time to sit and absorb.
But thank you for saying that. And I'm remembering I have one painting which is of a dewdrop. You know, in the mornings, usually you have a
Yes.
little dewdrop falling from the leaves. When I was 7 years old at school, this was in the early years of the revolution in Iran, and we were obliged to shout every morning, "Death to America." I was a small
Oh,
child, I was 7 years old, and I was very scared of starting my day thinking about death. And not only thinking about death, but sending that death wish for a whole other population. I thought, I
yeah.
want to start my day with that. So,
No.
um, I was lucky that the spot where we used to stand in a row, you know, sometimes from the cracks in the wall, little plants do manage to come out, and there was
Yes.
also a
Yes.
little dewdrop coming down. So I
Yes.
would literally focus on that little dewdrop and think I'm living inside this dewdrop. And later, as an adult in 2014, so about 10, 12 years ago, I enlarged that dewdrop to a painting which is 2 meter 50 by 1 meter 50, and it's made of 1,000 flowers.
Yep.
And I wanted to remind people that a morning dew reminds us that a new day has just started. It's the miracle of life. Now, for me, that dewdrop was real. It was a physical thing there, but nobody was seeing it. For me, that was more real than an imaginary death to another country, you know.
There was a beauty in its gentleness as well, I'm sure.
Exactly. There was a beauty in that gentleness, and I tried to bring that out in this large painting that I have made. I'll put a picture of that if you like to see. So, this
So
is
there's lots. Sorry.
about coming back to your point of noticing the smaller gentle things which can make a huge difference and do make a difference if we're conscious of them.
Yes. And this is some of the stuff that these small things, because it's a little bit, it's like behavior change and awareness change. And if we can get the young people to listen to the young people and understand what makes them tick, what drives them, and this is the whole role of the signal room and the conversations we want to start off with young people in the signal room. So it's what would you say? And there may be some young people listening today, or at least they'll listen to the recording. What would you say to young people listening today? What a takeaway message in terms of your art, philosophy, culture, etc.
Well, to try to look at the world, to observe the world, and not to pay attention only to the loudest, because those are very easy. They are coming after us in a way. The quiet things are also speaking to us. To try to hear and see other quiet voices.
I
It's important to hear also the loud ones. I'm not saying they shouldn't be heard, but the world is so full of life, so full of wonderful
mm,
things, and it's a pity to miss all that. So
I couldn't agree more. And you referred to the workplace, and we don't want to talk about work too much, but I'm sure you've had the same experience as many of us in group situations. A lot of the wisdom can come from the mouths of those who are most quiet. Just because they're not loud doesn't mean they have wisdom, don't that they don't have wisdom to share. And the trick is, in fact, to use, in fact, your gentleness philosophy to have those quieter people express themselves, articulate themselves, and say what they think, because often they think things that are very, very valuable. And we don't do that enough, do we? We don't listen to people and give people the opportunity who are quiet to express themselves. We let the loud people dominate.
Yeah, unfortunately. I mean, sometimes you get that even in classrooms when teaching children. I was teaching arts at schools for 10 years, and it was always a challenge to make sure every child has a space to express himself. Yes.
And they say, isn't it, listening is the beginning, imagining is how we build, and together we can shape what comes next. And I think that's where your art can play a real role. And the
Mhm.
signal, I'm just going to give a little heads up to the Signal Room initiative. So to everyone who's listening to this podcast, do stay connected and do follow up to the Signal Room, because there'll be some fascinating conversations with the next generation and how they see the world. So what I want to do now, Lida, is thank you very much for your time today, for your insight, for your generosity, for your personal stories, for your art, which is beautiful behind you, and everyone else who has joined us for this conversations. Conversations like this matter, and they open minds, they deepen understanding, and they help us shape, I think, a more human future rather than one that's driven by AI, algorithms, and etc. So I invite everyone on the podcast, webinar, to stay connected and share the journey with us as to what we're building. This is the Horizon Dialogue series, and the conversation will continue with you.